So I've got this floppy foot, so we can. I mean, this one will allow us to show the isolation of the joints. But look at the subtalar joint. You've got these three. There should be three facets underneath. All right. Okay. Now the problem is when you're testing the subtalar joint, you've got the ankle here, which has a lot of movement. You've got the mid-tarsal joint on the other side of it. Right. So your main issue is isolating the just the subtalar joint
To test, yeah.
to test. Right. So what we need to do is to look at each of the joints that we need to stop moving. And the way to stop the ankle joint moving is to dorsiflex the foot to resistance, because the wide front part of the talus can be jammed into the ankle mortise, and then you won't get any sort of play in that. All right. So we can do that by just, all we've got to do is to dorsiflex the foot to resistance like that. All right. So the first stage is to dorsiflex the foot at the ankle to resistance. And then what we do is we use this lateral column of the foot, which is the fourth and fifth mets, which articulate with the cuboid, and the cuboid articulates with the calcaneus. So if you push up on there, you can stop those joints moving. You reach the end of the range of movement and jam the mets against the cuboid and the cuboid against the calcaneus. And that creates a lateral column of bone, which doesn't allow the mid-tarsal joint to move, right? So if you've got a bridge across there, you can't move the mid-tarsal joint because you've effectively limited what it can do, right? So basically all we've got to do to test subtalar joint, just relax your foot, is to dorsiflex the ankle to resistance, and the same thumb pressure on the fourth and fifth is locking this lateral column of the foot, right? Yeah, ankle joint can't move, mid-tarsal joint can't move, and then all we've got to do is just swing the foot through its range of movement. Yeah, just with one thumb. You can just put your finger on the side there just to help. So you're looking for a smooth range of movement with definite endpoints, right? That signifies that the joint is, if you like, in good condition, the articular surfaces. So if you get any restriction to movement or you get any crepitus in the joint, that's a sign that there may be some arthritis within the joint. Yeah.
There's no need to put it in neutral before you do this.
Well, this is just always showing it's a range of movement at the moment. Yeah. And then neutral position, you feel your talonavicular joint, and then you'll find a position which is a fairly stable position about there, where it's aligned in neutral position. Right. And then putting your hand on the leg, you can swing the foot into supination, back to a neutral position, and then pronate the subtalar joint. Right. Now this one looks to have, it has a good range of movement. There's perhaps a bit more supination than there is pronation, but there's not that much in it. Yeah. So it looks to be, you know, there's nothing wrong with the joint. It's got a good range of movement. It's smooth, etc., etc. So we wouldn't worry about that from a joint point of view. Right, and then the mid-tarsal joint, which people tend to find is the most difficult one to do. You've got your talonavicular cuboid articulation. We've now got two joints on this side that we're going to stop moving, the ankle and the subtalar joint, right? And that's the key to isolating the mid-tarsal joint. So what we have to do is to get the heel in the palm of your hand. And I appreciate it's difficult if you've got a small hand and a big foot, yeah? But what you can do is you can slide the heel further back in your hand like that, right? And you're trying to grasp up to the malleoli on either side, right? So what we do again, we dorsiflex the ankle to resistance. We grasp the heel in the palm of our hand and reach up with our fingers to get the hold the malleole line. I'm now bridging across the subtalar joint and the ankle joint, and all we've got to do now is to adjust our position until we get into subtalar joint neutral, because we're going to test the mid-tarsal joint with the subtalar joint in neutral, which is about there, right? And then holding across the sort of bases of the metatarsals, or slightly more towards the middle of the shaft of the metatarsals, and sitting slightly medial to the foot, we can test the oblique axis of the mid-tarsal joint, which is like that, like a push and a pull. You have to flick, yeah. So you've got dorsiflexion and abduction, plantarflexion and adduction. Yeah, that's got a good range of movement. Probably towards the flexible end, rather. It's not restricted, it's quite mobile. Yeah, dorsiflexion, abduction, plantarflexion, adduction. Right, and then inversion and eversion about the long axis. You've got to be careful with this one because the skin easily rolls over the bones and it appears as though you're getting a lot of movement. If you look at my hand, it's moving a lot, but the actual foot isn't moving very much at all. Right, so it's not, you know, when you do this, it looks a lot, but if you do this, it's not a lot. Yeah? Okay. And then, is there another little model on there? Is my first ray one, the plastic, there's a plastic one there. Not that one, there's another one somewhere. I brought another one in, I think, didn't I? Here it is. Okay, so your first ray, you've got to find neutral position, line up your fingers across the lesser metatarsal heads, right, in a nice straight finger there, and then you want to just move that one out the way. Just you can put our fingers on the first metatarsal head, and you can use the two fingernails of my first fingers to check the amount of dorsiflexion and plantarflexion. And normal range is about 1 centimetre, about 5 millimetres dorsiflexion, and then 5 millimetres plantarflexion. And in actual fact, that looks fairly normal, doesn't it? Look at that, about 0.5 centimetre. Look at that, not far off the same. Yeah. So I'd say that's a fairly normal first ray movement. So you're looking for any discrepancy. Is there more dorsiflexion? Is there more plantarflexion? Is it flexible? Is it rigid? You know, those are the things you need to be commenting on. If it dorsiflexes a lot, you're going to get more pressure over the second metatarsal head. If it plantarflexes and is fairly rigid, you're going to get problems under the first met head. You might get sesamoid pain, for example, if you have a plantarflex first ray. And then you do exactly the same with the fifth ray, and you can look and see what that will do. There's not much dorsiflexion there. There's a lot more plantarflexion, probably about 8 millimetres there, 2 millimetres up. Yeah. So this is showing a lot more plantarflexion.
Should that be the same 5 millimetres?
Well, I don't know. I've looked at them, and I think generally they do tend to have more plantarflexion than dorsiflexion in a lot of instances. But in this instance, for example, you've got a nice corn under there, or at least a callus, yeah. So there, under this, yeah. Same on that one. So that would fit in with its range of movement, wouldn't it? Yeah. Okay. And the other one that you need to do is to do the ankle joint, which you need to sit at the side here. And it's worth just drawing a line on here So we're looking at the lateral side of the calcaneus and the lower part of the fibula here. Those are your visual references, right? And you must keep the subtalar joint in neutral position here. And basically what we do is we dorsiflex, keep the knee extended, and see how far you can go. Now that's not getting to 90 degrees, is it? No? Right? So there's not 90 degrees there, when in actual fact you should be able to get it past 90 to 80 degrees. So there should be 10 degrees of dorsiflexion from 90.
Oh, I
So
see.
we haven't got that here. That's an ankle equinus, yeah.
All right, so you need to be able to.
You're not even happy.
No. Right. You've not enough ankle dorsiflexion.
So does that mean that she
She's not very-
pronates?
Not necessarily. You can pronate, but you can also have a bouncy heel movement. The heel lifts early, or you must have seen people who walk with, you know what I mean. don't you?
Andrew said it was the skanky walk.
Yeah.
Or scally walk.
Scally walk.
Scally walk.
Yeah.
Skanky.
Right. Okay. So we then want to know: is the thing that's restricting the ankle, is it due to the shape of the bones in the ankle? So is it a bony ankle equinus? Right. And you test that if it's a solid end point and you can't get it any further. So if you keep applying the pressure, it should give more if it's muscular. If it
Right.
doesn't, if it's
Yeah.
solid, it suggests that it's the shape of the bones that is the body of the talus is flatter than it should be. So you only get a certain amount of movement, and then the bones won't allow any more.
That's a genetic profile.
It's the shape of the joint,
Yeah.
characteristics of the joint.
Does Prius feel
Hmm?
Is that
Well, that
Bony,
feels
is
to
it?
me as though it's bony, because it won't go any further than that. Yeah. And then what we do, if you get a spongy feel, so you test it and it goes to a certain level, and then if you keep applying pressure, it'll give, and you'll get a sort of spongy feel to the end point. That indicates that it's muscles, it's soft tissue that are restricting the ankle. Right, and then what you need to do is to, so we know it's soft tissue, but we don't know what soft tissue. And one of the things we can do is to test to see whether the gastrocnemius is tight, because if you bend the knee, you can slacken off the gastrocnemius. And if you suddenly get enough dorsiflexion, that means the gastrocnemius was tight. If you do it and you get a spongy feel, right, and you bend the knee, it's still spongy, no change, that tends to suggest the soleus is tight. And the significance of doing that, there's no point asking someone to stretch if they've got a bony ankle equinus. They'll be stretching all day and they won't do anything, right? Okay. And that's basically it. So what you need to think about is where the joint is, which other joints have I got to stop moving to isolate that joint, where the axis is and how it moves, and be able to put it through its range of movement. And then comment on what you actually find. Yeah? There's not that many joints. Ankle, subtalar, mid-tarsal joint, first and fifth raise. Yeah, you can also do the first MP joint. There's not a great deal to do in that one.
Yeah.
Yeah?
from that decided
That was one of the few ones I remembered.
Well, what it does is, the non-weight bearing doesn't tell you much. It tells you what the joints are capable of moving, how they're capable of moving. Yeah? And whether they're flexible, whether they're rigid, whether there's any damage to the joint surfaces. And then you've got to see how all those joints, when the foot's loaded, how they behave. Yeah? And that's your relaxed calcaneal stance position and neutral calcaneal stance